What's good, YouTube and Toxic Regime? ToxicSight here, back again with part number 8 of 9 on the Paladins Frontlines. In the last video we discussed Ash. So there's only 2 more people to discuss. We are going to jump to Inara in this one. The only other frontline is Khan, who I've said multiple times that we're going to have to do an in-depth talk about him and his ult now that they did changes to it. But that's for another video. In this video, we are going to be doing Inara. Her talents are Mother's Grace, Earthen Guard, gains an additional 20% damage reduction, and now grants CC immunity. Tremors, reduce the cooldown of Impasse by 70%. Treacherous Ground, Warder's Fill has a 50% increased radius and now cripples. Which crippling is you can't use your mobility skill inside of it. Wrath of the Stigala, hitting all 3 shots on the same target deals an extra 200 damage. Whilst Wrath of Stigala, that extra 200 damage might sound good, you have to hit all 3 shots from it on the same target. Now granted, if they're stunned or crippled, that's easier, but if they're not going to be crippled if you go Wrath of Stigala, because you need Treacherous Ground to get the cripple. And you only get the stun off of her ult or other players. Some other players get cripple. But you're not always guaranteed to hit all 3 shots on the same target to get the 200 extra damage. Because they are going to be jumping around, moving around, walking, mobility, and everything. Tremors reduce the cooldown of Impasse by 70%. Impasse is good. You do not need it that often. I mean, sometimes you need it whenever you don't have it because you just used it and somebody else does something that you need to block with it. But anyways, you get more benefit out of these 2 individually than these 2 combined. Mother's Grace, like I said, it gains 20% additional damage reduction and grants CC immunity, which is excellent. Treacherous Ground, cripples, and 50% increased range. We're going to go into Mother's Grace first. Okay, these are the 2 new ones. Mother's Grace, Geomancer 4, reduce the cooldown of Earthen Guard by 2 seconds. Stone, Bulwark, heal for 100% per second during Earthen Guard. Gain 300 maximum health. Standing in Warder's Field heals you for 60 per second. Standing in Warder's Field grants you 10% damage reduction. Your primary fire, your left click Stone Spear, direct damage, fires a burst of 3 projectiles dealing 225 damage each over 0.3 seconds every 1.25 at medium range. Earthen Guard, which this is what that is. And you get 5 barrages, so you get 15 shots off without having to reload. And her reload speed's not all that bad either. So that's her left click. Her right click Earthen Guard. Enter a defensive state that lasts 5 seconds where you and your deployables take 30% reduced damage and you take 40% increased healing. Now with her impasse is considered a deployable, which deploy a wall that grows out of the ground and lasts 5 seconds. And Warder's Field, area damage, place a stone obelisk that pulses, which slows enemies for 60% and deals 150 damage per second. Those are both considered deployables for her. Which if you have Earthen Guard up, they take 30% reduced damage, and you take 40, and you receive 40% increased healing. And then with Mother's Grace, you gains 20% increased damage reduction and grants CC immunity. So really with that, it states defensive for 5 seconds, where you and your deployables take 30% reduced damage. You actually take 50 reduced damage take 40% healing, and have CC immunity. And this is what it looks like. You just get stones around your screen. I don't remember what your opponent sees during it. But it's a really good ability because, like I said, CC immunity will prevent you from being pip ulted, which will prevent you from being Torvald ulted, Drogo's ulted. I'm just gonna do the ults. I'm not gonna go into the abilities. It'll prevent her if she uses rally here. It'll prevent the stun. It'll prevent the stun. No, that's not CC. It'll prevent the hit. It'll prevent you being turned, being feared, being night-timed. I guess that will prevent you from being revealed. Being grabbed. Well, you can't do INR, VNR, and comp. Being turned. Being grabbed, being blinded or stun or whatever his does, being uppercutted, being blown away, and being ulted. So it's really, really good. Plus you get 50% damage reduction during it. You get 40% increased healing. What's next? That was Earthen Guard. Impasse deploys a wall that grows out of the ground in the last 5 seconds. That's what it does. Most of the time, it's got a long cooldown. So that's why I was saying, you need to actually only use it whenever you absolutely need to. I'm still trying to learn on when the right times and wrong times to use it on. Her next ability is Warder's Field. Places stone obelisk that pulses, which slows enemies for 60% and deals 150% damage, 150 damage per second. What I like to do with her is drop the wall. Drop your F, right click into Earthen Guard, so they all take less damage while Earthen Guard is up. And as they move through Warder's Field, they get slowed. And then just go to town with them since they're slowed. And you take less damage. You can just manhandle just about any of them. She is by far, her and Term are by far the greatest 2 tanks in the game, in my opinion. Now there'll be a lot of people that argue that point for Ruckus, or for Makoa, for Barracks, the most overlooked champ in the game, or frontline in the game. But people argue what I just said about her and Term being the best tanks in the game for Makoa and probably Nando. But while Makoa is good and his Leviathan legendary is excellent, what's he gonna do against where's his CC? I mean, his Leviathan has CC immunity on it, but only during his ult. With her, if you're using Earthen or Mother's Grace, all you have to do is wait till Drogo's ults, wait till he gets close to you, and right click. And there's so much stuff that her right click with CC immunity counters. It's unreal. And it's just a right click. It's on an 8-second cooldown. Now we're gonna go into Treacherous Ground. Treacherous Ground, Warder's Field is increased by 50% and cripples. Treacherous Ground loadout is reduced to cooldown of Warder's Field by 4 seconds. Staying in Waterfield grants you 25% damage reduction. Staying in Warder's Field heals you for 60, increased by 300, and 14% crowd control reduction. Another thing about the Mother's Grace Mother's Grace, 20% increased damage reduction. But you also get 10% damage reduction while standing in Warder's Field. So you really have 60%. I could actually, technically I could lower this down and raise this up. And get more damage reduction, but technically speaking, this loadout with this build has 60% damage reduction while Earth and Guard is up and you're standing in your Warder's Field. But we're gonna get into this. It's the same thing, everything's the same. The only thing that's different is your F. Its radius is a whole lot bigger. You have a 5-second cooldown on it now. What's glorious about doing treacherous ground is a lot of people, whenever they're going against well, anybody, whenever flanks come in at the tanks to try and kill them, a lot of their movement abilities pretty much ignore tanks because they get away from them so fast and so easily, like invisibility or pip flanks use weightless to jump away and get away super fast. Nether step from Andro, sliding from Lex, the double jump and prowl, which increases her movement speed on Maeve. All you really have to do to stop them is whenever they get to the point, wall where they came from, drop your F, Earth and Guard, and they can't do anything. Because the flanks first plan of action to get away is go back the way they came because they know no one's there. And once you drop the wall from where they came from, you drop your Earth and Guard or your Warder's Field, they can't do anything. The last aspect about her is her ult, which throw your spear passing through shields and stunning any enemy within 40 units of its impact for 2 seconds and dealing 500 damage. While it doesn't sound that great, its stun is ridiculous because if you, let me build it back up. If you build up her ult, if you build up her ult and get it, like okay, there. What I really enjoy doing with her ult is I'll ult into a group, I'll drop my warders, I'll drop the wall behind it, I'll shoot, and whenever they get up, then I'll do my Earth and Guard so it actually lasts during combat with them. But you stun into a cripple with the wall behind them, they can't run away from you, they can't use their F to get away, to get past you, and they took 500 damage from the ult. They're taking 100, what is it, 125? 225 damage a pop from your spear. Inara's top tier. There's really no arguing against her being top tier. Her cripple plus the wall plus Earth and Guard is game. You can't do anything. Now the items to purchase with her, regardless of what build you use, is gonna be the same. I always go caught with her. I've only gone record with her once, and it's not really all that great. I always go caught, always go rejuve. If you have a healer, if you don't have a healer, kill the heal, of course. Nimble is a godsend to her, because she's so, I mean, she looks like she's decently fast, but she's the second slowest out of all the tanks. She is the second slowest of the tanks. So Nimble or Master Rider if you need to get to the point, but I always recommend Nimble on her. After having a talk with some of my viewers, Nimble is a godsend to her now that I actually pay attention to it. And the same thing, Blast Shield's Haven or Resilience. Illuminate doesn't really benefit her much because, like I said, all you have to do is if you're running Treacherous Ground, if you think somebody's invisible near you, pop it. Their F gets negated. They can't go hot. They can't go invisible. It's a done deal for them. She is comp viable. She does get banned quite a lot. In all tiers that I've seen, low tiers she gets banned a lot. Medium tiers she gets banned a lot. High tiers, she is definitely banned unless you think you're gonna outsmart your opponent, draft her and pick her first, which is kind of hard to do. But oh yeah, I forgot to say, in other videos, Ashe is viable. Barrack's not viable as a solo tank, but is comp viable. Nando's definitely viable. Inara in this, now that I'm in this video, Inara is viable, but like I said, she gets banned a lot. Koa is viable, but I've seen him starting to get banned a lot again. Ruckus is viable. Terminus is viable if he passes the ban stage. And Torvald is not viable as a solo tank. That's going to do it for this video. Be good to yourself, be good to your loved ones, and I will catch you in the next one.